Environment Subcommittee meeting for Thursday, October 29th here at 11 o'clock. And as a preliminary matter, I will, read the script for remotely controlled, conducted open meetings. Sorry, I had that muted. This is Arthur Gasparo, Vice Chairman of the Airport Commission, and please permit me to confirm that all members, persons participated on the agenda and are present. When you can hear me, members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Commissioner Buscarin?
Here.
And then, Commissioner Buscarin and I are the subcommittee. And then we have Airport Chairman, Mr. Drake. Can you hear us?
Here, yes, thank you.
And Commissioner Ms. Topham?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Andrea, I don't see on here, so it's just us. Staff, when I please call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Perales?
Here.
Mr. Carberg?
Here.
And Ms. Sylvia?
Here.
Thank you. And anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Lasden?
Here.
And Mr. Merrow?
Here.
Thank you. Introduction, good afternoon. It's an open meeting of the Energy and Environment Subcommittee being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th due to COVID. In order to mitigate transmission of COVID, we've been directed and advised to suspend public gatherings and allowed to have not have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to encourage to participate remotely. This order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment for this meeting. The subcommittee is convening by video conference via Zoom app and will be aired at a later time on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting materials, all supporting materials are provided to the members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Ground rules. Turn into the first item on the agenda. We'll cover some ground rules. I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, we'll go down the line of members and then go to staff. Please remember to mute your phone and computer when you're not speaking, and please speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait till the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And for items of public comment, members of the public will be asked to raise their hand as a visual cue if you'd like to make a comment, and one member at a time. You'll be called on, and finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. And with that, we will proceed with the agenda as published. First item on the agenda is, let me just go to that screen here. 1 second. I'm going to try to run things on two. So again, the meeting is being both audio and video recorded as stated, and we were going to start off with item 3 of the agenda, which is the environmental assessment, environmental impact statement, final draft chapters. And we just received, at least I believe Tony and I did, links to those chapters, rather voluminous, but I have had a chance to read most of it and look forward to this discussion. I think as best I'll turn it over to Mr. Carberg and then Mr. Lasden or Mr. Merrow, if you want to give us any kind of a sort of brief overview.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. What I have in your packet are excerpts from what you mentioned in our a lot of documents that we've made available via link. I've asked Mr. Lasden and Mr. Merrow to pull out the items that I believed would be of interest to the commission, excuse me, as well as the 20 drawing figure set for them to review. if there are items that come up, we can certainly go to the link and pull them up and share screen them as they go through. I'd like to turn it over to Rich and Jed, and I'll share my screen with the packet material.
Thanks.
Thanks, Noah. Let this come up. Okay. So we've been working diligently on putting together the various chapters of the draft environmental assessment, environmental impact report. It's intended to satisfy the requirements of both MEPA with the environmental impact report and NEPA with the environmental assessment. It is a rather voluminous document. I'm sorry about that. I wish it was a little more streamlined. But we're constrained by the regulatory requirements to some degree. And some of the information kind of came together quickly at the last, near the end. The berm was added late in the process. And there were some changes to the runway 624. FAA determined that we didn't need to do as much regrading, as much topographical work as we originally planned. So that kind of came together late in the process as well. But the alternatives are pretty well set in stone at this point. We've got the impacts determined. There is going to be a substantial amount of increased impervious area, new pavement, a little over 10 acres probably, if all the projects are built. There's also going to be a fair amount of what they call priority habitat of rare species that will be disturbed. Most of that is either the new impervious or temporary impact due to grading to meet FAA guidelines around the new infrastructure. The chapters have been just about all sent to the airport, the FAA, and the Massachusetts DOT Aeronautics Division. The airport's reviewed most of it at this point, and they've also been made available to the Airport Commission via a OneDrive link, which I believe you folks have received. Encourage you to pass along any comments you may have, and happy to answer any questions you may have about those chapters. I mentioned the impervious acreage, the rare species. Those are probably the biggest impact issues. Another one that's come up in the last year or two has been the PFAS issue. And what do we do with contaminated soil or groundwater if we encounter it? Those issues are being addressed to some degree in the Taxiway E project, and there's additional testing going on. Also, the Waterline project is dealing with that question. And as those projects evolve, that'll give us a little bit better guidance of what specifically would be required for this project if contaminated soils or groundwater are encountered. The rare species mitigation has not been fully fleshed out to date. We do have a conversation with Amy Hainig of the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program tomorrow morning to talk about this a little bit more. Now that we've got the impacts finalized, we think that there will be some combination of minimizing impacts by avoiding rare plants or transplanting rare plants that might be impacted, similar to what's being done on the Taxiway E project. Maybe collecting and spreading seed of rare plants. There might be some additional habitat management work elsewhere on the airport. We don't want to do anything that would tie up land that the airport might need for other purposes in the future, but there might be some additional work that can be done in that regard. I realize you already do extensive habitat management work as it is, and possibly some compensation in the form of a fee, an in lieu fee, in lieu of other mitigation, which might be used by the state to purchase important conservation land on the island or elsewhere, or purchase equipment or do habitat management or restoration somewhere else. I think that's kind of in the nutshell, the status of the EIR, EA, and the key issues involved. Do you have any questions or comments to date in that regard?
How many acres are you intending to, are we planning to add pavement?
It's a little over 10 acres. And I don't believe it was in your packet, but the alternative chapter, which is chapter 5, has a table in it that shows the amount of land disturbance essentially proposed for the project. And it's just a little over 10 acres, and my screen is frozen, so I can't get at it myself. But the biggest single project in that regard is the South Ramp project. And I don't have the acreage right in front of me here, but a little over 10 acres overall. You can see the gray here, and the figure in front of you is the South Ramp. Another chunk is the proposed high-speed exit taxiway in this area. There's some minor increases here and there with fillets, improving the geometry of the taxiway and runway connections, and turning areas so that aircraft can turn safely, and a few other minor items, but those are the big ones. We have identified stormwater management that would be constructed with each of the projects. It's fairly extensive. The big part of the cost, it is being designed to meet the state stormwater standards. There's a variety of measures proposed: deep sump catch basins, infiltration basins, swales, a couple other things. So, we're feeling confident that the groundwater will be treated properly, that there won't be adverse impacts to the aquifer with these infiltration devices, because it's so sandy and gravelly here that if you discharge water into the ground directly, it doesn't get great treatment. I mean, usually it's a great thing if you can infiltrate your stormwater runoff. In this case, the existing soils are so coarse that it doesn't provide you good treatment. So a lot of our best management practices for stormwater are series of practices. So for example, the runoff might go into a swale and then into an infiltration basin. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tony.
It does.
Okay.
If I may, if I recall the table correctly, and I believe I am, the South Ramp extension is on the order of 6 to 7 acres. The runway 24 high-speed exit is about 1 1/10, maybe 1 1/4. And then incrementally, the Gulf Echo separation and some of the fillet work will add up for the remaining 2 or so acres.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
I would say that a majority of my questions and comments are on the ramp and the chapters, but I'm wondering if it might be more fruitful to go through a couple of the other projects that might be a little bit quicker and then spend a little more time on that. One of the questions that I had, if we could bring up page 19 of our packet, which was related to the fence. And I know we had a brief discussion earlier on as to the preferred alternative. So this is 19, which is not the preferred. And then if we could quickly go to the next page, alternative 7B was selected. And I understand that it has to do with trying to avoid the restricted area. However, I just want to be sure before we put this forward that this really is, you know, the best way to go. I know that we're balancing competing interests, but when I look at this as a preferred alternative, where that curve is, you know, with a rate of erosion on the South Shore, it's not going to be all that many years until we're having to deal with this again and face, you know, it doesn't take erosion or a breach to happen over the whole length. It's as soon as you lose the one spot. And so in trying to think about how important it is to not be coming back at these projects when they're long-term planned like this, you know, is this really the best alternative versus the other alternative, 7A, which is much closer to a parallel track to the shoreline, such that, you know, a breach should, you know, it's going to get you a lot more years, and then it doesn't really give you a sort of a single hot spot the way that we're likely to face in not too many years at set with alternative 7B. And I'm wondering if you guys could just hit upon why, you know, why 7B instead of 7A. Understand that, you know, how complicated would it be to go the other way? And if we're doing the environmental permitting, should it be, or is there a way to do both even to get this other alternative also permitted from an environmental perspective, even if it's not permitted or fully approved through FAA? So those are my thoughts or questions related to that.
You want me to take that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so Arthur, great questions. We had a lot of discussions with the FAA during our CIP meeting about the long-term viability of this runway and beach erosion, and specifically the runway safety area. So if you go to the next picture, Jen. So the curve in the road is to keep the perimeter road out of the runway safety area. And so we've curved back and hooked into the existing condition so that we stay outside of the runway safety area, so that we don't have to do a runway safety area determination and possibly have to move the localizer again. Because you can also see in there, the localizer has been actually moved. It's not there, it's down further. It's down there, just about 25 feet above that line is about where it is today. And you can see the sort of the shape of the critical area is this shape. Can I have the controls? How do I do that?
I believe in order for you to be able to move your mouse over this is you would have to screen share it.
Okay.
So Noah has screen shared it. He's
Okay.
the one who can, so you could direct him, but
Okay.
it's not like a Zoom thing.
Okay, so at the bottom of the runway safety area, you can see sort of an angled line and a perpendicular line and then an angled line. That is the critical area for the localizer right along the shore. That's the line right there. That line is the localizer critical area. So if we move the fence above that, we would have to relocate the localizer to protect the signal. So in our discussions with the FAA at the CIP meeting, I think it was just last month, they understood the long-term problem with the beach, but they did not at this point want to address it with any kind of a study to figure out what happens to the runway. They essentially said, just leave it in place. And they recognized that the part of the road that we are relocating, that's correct, Noah, though, that red line and then the one on the other side is the critical area for the localizer. So the piece of the road and the fence in this drawing that we are relocating is because there is actually a breach at the fence line today. So that's why, and this is where the bank is eroded the greatest, and that's why we are relocating this portion of the road. Understanding that in the next couple years, we could have to move this because right where the arrow is an actual breach of the dune. So this was the sort of the immediate need to move that. And then we did move it in conjunction with VHB doing a habitat investigation. So you see sort of halfway up that relocation is sort of an amoeba shaped area that is habitat. So the road was moved far enough away to get around the habitat.
It's actually a cluster of rare plants, the New England blazing star. In
Okay.
that area.
So does
Bogged-
that, Arthur, does that sort of give you the,
Yeah, it's fine. I don't want to get too bogged down on it. I
Yeah.
understand it's things that, and I think we did talk about this as part of at our CIP meeting. We did, but I just wanted to be sure. I guess my question was related to also environmental permitting, and maybe it's not possible, but since we're doing all of this work in an EAIR, understanding that we'll have to come back to move the localizer to also move the road.
right?
Is it possible that, sort of all 7B is what is for phase 1, if you will, and then for environmental permitting, you also are able to include 7A to get clearance for that to happen as a
So-
follow-up, or is that does it just not work that way? It's got to be one or the other.
Well, it's unfortunately for this option that we're showing on the screen now, this is an option that we sort of drew. The FAA through the runway safety area determination process is going to have a big piece of the approval of what this looks like. So, I mean, they've seen this as an alternative, but it's not gone through the runway safety area determination or through all the other FAA lines of business for them to really opine on this particular picture.
I get it. And I think we want to keep to the sort of the charge of this subcommittee in terms of environmental, and then,
Yep.
the rest of that is really probably more under the capital subcommittee. But I just, given that it did have to do with erosion, and I was looking at it from, how efficient could we be for environmental permitting?
Sure.
But
We,
I understand.
Art, we can ask the natural heritage people if it would be possible to get a sort of an open-ended permit for this route. We'll be getting a permit for all of the projects on the airport collectively. But maybe we could leave some flexibility here. I don't believe there's any rare plants in the path, in the way of the other alignment through the localizer and runway safety area. So I don't think that's going to be a big constraint for them. There's no, it's all rare species habitat, but there's no individual rare plants along that stretch of the road. So, maybe we can get some flexibility written into the permit there.
Okay, thanks. Tony, did you have anything on this, or? You're muted.
No, nothing else.
Any other commissioners or anyone else want to add on anything onto this? Okay. The other project that I saw on the for the smaller of things was the crew quarters, and just the two different configurations, which I'm not sure that I've seen before. And I just want to be sure. So I'm wondering again on this one, that I think that it's good that we're proposing to go with what would essentially be a larger footprint by going with alternative A. And I think that there's going to have to probably be further discussion with the commission and development of this whole concept. But I don't know that I've seen before, this particular layout. And I guess I just wanted to briefly touch on it as that this essentially would all be cleared. And then, just so I understand the development. And then there's an awfully lot of discussion through the report about environmental benefits related to this crew quarters development. And then it seems to have almost taken a whole life on its own in terms of energy and much more so than I would have thought that it would have in terms of, you know, the